Ruin My Childhood.
Thank you for listening to Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. As always, I'm Mike.
And I'm Kat.
I've got my... I don't know why I did it like that.
We're off to a really good start.
That's Kat. And I got to say, this is an episode I'm very excited about. We've got a very special guest, one of my best friends in the entire world, and one of our former hosts of Remake Rewind. And he's been on this podcast before. We've got Dustin Cantrell. How you doing, Dustin?
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited that you're back. We did the Sandlot episode 2 years ago together, and that's still, after almost 70 episodes, one of my favorite episodes of this podcast.
Has it really been that long?
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah, 2 years.
Yikes.
Yeah, we did that the first year of the podcast. So yeah, and it's been 2 years since we did the Sandlot episode.
Wow, we moved. Dustin had a kid. All kinds of stuff's going down.
I'm glad that Dustin's back. I really miss recording Remake Rewind with him, but he started a family, and that's way more important than this podcast and any podcast.
Slightly.
But but I'm glad that you were able to take some time away and talk to us about one of my favorite movies growing up, and with one of my favorite actors of all time. Dustin, would you like to tell us what you picked for us to watch this week?
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yep. So I'm really excited about this. We're going to probably go through it pretty quick because Instagram and Facebook has been down most of today. So I don't actually have access to any of the comments from people through social media. So this episode, we're not going to be able to, read any comments from our listeners because we don't have access to them right now. And it is what it is. So Dustin, can you tell us what you remember about this movie before we go and watch it and talk about it?
So I remember it being just a really good time, like a very enjoyable movie to watch. I remember in school, like a lot of teachers would make fun of aspects of this movie, like the mispronunciation of Socrates and things like that.
Socrates?
Yeah, like it was like instantly part of the culture of the time, I guess. I don't know. It was very strange, but it was everywhere. And I did enjoy it quite a bit. I remember enjoying this movie. I remember it being a really good time. I remember, this kind of like weird romp through history. And I kind of remember it just being like everywhere at the time. Like everybody had seen this movie. Everybody could talk about this movie.
Katrina, what do you remember about it?
Next to nothing. Honestly, next to nothing. I probably watched it when it first came out and then didn't revisit it. So my like 18 to 21-year-old boyfriend, he was pretty much a dead ringer for Keanu in this era, except that he had shorter hair. But he was like the typical skateboarding stoner kid, and they have the same voice. They had the same face. They had a similar way of talking because we grew up in Northern California, and he was a stoner kid, so Rad and Totally and Right On were definitely in our wheelhouse. And dude, I mean, everyone calls everyone dude in Northern California. My mom calls me dude sometimes. So I think for that reason, I didn't revisit this film for a very long time. There's a little bit of bias against my ex. And honestly, like old school Keanu just bugs me for that reason. So yeah,
my heart.
I have a hard time with old school Keanu because of my own bias.
You know how I feel about Keanu.
I know. Older Keanu's all right. I mean, he can't really act, but it's okay.
He knows his roles. Like he plays certain characters very well. I agree that he's not the best in everything, but he.
But who is?
There are certain roles that
who's the best at everything? Come on, cut him some slack.
Yeah, cut him some slack, Katrina. He's had a very difficult life.
You don't know what he's been through, man.
I mean,
Jesus.
We hear a lot about it these days.
Yeah, nowadays.
We do.
He was still probably dealing with some of it during this time, right?
I mean, this was before River Phoenix passed away.
Oh, we should look that up. When did the tragedy strike?
I don't know. But yeah, I don't remember much about this. Alex Winter, who is Bill, we don't see a lot of him, but he actually looks a lot like my grandfather. He mainly does directing. Oh, does he? Yeah, he's like a dead ringer for my grandfather, plus the curly hair.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of weird, because Mike's an attractive dude.
River Phoenix died on Halloween in 1993 in West Hollywood, California.
The Viper Room.
So for me, this movie was a huge part of my childhood. I loved this movie. Every time it came on TV, it did not matter what point in the movie it was on, my dad would stop and watch it. My dad was one of those people that during commercials, he would flip around channels. For this movie, he would not because he didn't want to miss any of it. I loved this movie. I loved the second one. When I got my first job and started, making my DVD collection, this was one of the first DVDs that I purchased because I loved this movie. I used to watch it all the time. It's probably been 5 or 6 years
That's an
since I've
interesting
watched
choice.
it. I love this movie. Love this movie. And I actually, every time I drive by a Circle K, and Katrina could validate this, anytime I see a Circle K in Southern California, I go, strange things are afoot at Circle K.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Another thing that stands out is that the movie takes place in San Dimas. And when I was little, like, there would be advertisements for Raging Waters in San Dimas. Like, the only thing I knew about San Dimas was that it had a badass water park. That's kind of a huge aspect of this movie.
I have to drive through San Dimas every once in a while.
Do you ever go to Raging Waters?
No, I haven't been there. My company picnic for work was in San Dimas like a month ago. But every time I drive through San Dimas, I get a little bit giddy thinking about this movie.
We actually passed by a Circle K, and you got really excited.
I did. I legitimately, every time, strange things are afoot at Circle K. This movie's great.
I think that's the moment I
Carlin.
caved to agree to do this film on this podcast.
It was when I did that and got really excited.
Yeah, because usually the episodes are better when we both remember it, but
also Dustin
it
was a factor, I'm sure.
Dustin's into it, so we'll do it.
But I can probably recite a lot of this movie. I love the beginning of the movie, right before they start their little time travel romp, as Dustin said, and I love the end of the movie when they have this like crazy montage of all the historical figures just causing mayhem at a mall in San Dimas. I think it's hilarious. I think it's fun, and I'm really excited to watch this movie.
All right, so should we get down to it?
All right.
Tired of school?
Who was Joan of Arc?
Noah's wife? Like to travel?
Can we go anywhere we want at any time? You can do anything you want.
Let's reach out and touch someone. Meet interesting people.
How's it going, Royal Ugly Dudes?
Put them in the Iron Maiden.
Excellent!
Execute them.
Bogus!
Then hitch a ride with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Party on, dude.
Rated PG.
All right, we just watched Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and God, watching it as an adult, like I said, it's probably been 5 or 6 years since I've watched it. I think I said that at the top of the episode, and I kind of regret not watching this more often.
It's ridiculous.
Same thing happened with Speed. It's probably been 10 years since I watched Speed, but when we covered Speed on the podcast, I was all in on Speed and regret not watching it for the last 10 years.
So I came to the realization of watching this movie this time that there's no difference between Bill and Ted as characters. They're 100% interchangeable. They do not have complementary skills. They just have the same ones.
The same skill set.
Like they're in a band and they both can't play guitar. Everything about them is the same. Like it doesn't matter what happens to either of them.
I think Bill has a little more common sense. He knows a little bit more about history.
Does
Marginally,
he?
Not really.
Marginally more.
I don't know. Would you call him the smart one?
If I had to pick which one I was gonna put my life in the hands of, it'd probably be Bill.
You think Bill's the brains of the operation?
He actually does, now that I think about it, is slightly smarter. He's the one that realizes that when they have the time machine that's broken, he was like, oh, the antenna's bent. And then also when
Genius.
when Ted is going to get sent off to military school and they're trying to figure out what they need to do, Bill's also the one that's like, wait a second, we have a time machine. Why don't we just steal the keys and go back? So he's kind of the one that realizes they have the power of the gods to manipulate their future kind of thing. So I think I could see him being the slightly smarter one. But to Dustin's point, with them being almost identical, it's almost like if you play Super Smash Brothers or Mortal Kombat and two people pick the same character, it just changes color.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it also explains why they're such good friends, because they are so similar. But it's just kind of weird. Like it's a buddy movie, kind of, but like there's no dynamic there. They're just the exact same
There's no
person.
conflict with them. Like any buddy cop movie from the 80s or any buddy comedy, there's normally a point where they divide and they have to come back together. It's like, nope, they're all in. They're best buddies. Nothing can separate them. Everything's great.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever know anyone like them growing up?
Yeah, there was this group, these two kids growing up in my middle school, and they were friends all through high school. I don't know where they are now, but one's name was Isaiah and one's name was Carlos, and they were inseparable, and they were basically the same person.
Like
The same person.
Like, do you think that these, like, Keanu Reeves and Alex Winters, like, really cared who was Bill or who was Ted?
Well, interesting enough, yes, they did.
Really?
They both auditioned for the opposite role.
Why?
And it didn't
I
matter.
don't know. So right. So the thing about the Bill and Ted, let me give you guys a little bit of history, and eventually we'll summarize the movie and then go into a deeper discussion. But a little bit of a history. There used to be 3 characters. I don't know what the third character is because it doesn't matter. But it was a sketch kind of duo initially.
Trio.
And then it was a trio, and then they only had done about a month's worth of performances before the third guy dropped out. So then it was refined to being Bill and Ted. And initially they were kind of more nerdy kids.
Okay.
But then when they got the rights to the movie, the studio actually, like, some executives saw Alex Winters and Keanu Reeves apparently hanging out at a mall and just goofing around, so they asked them to audition.
What?
They got the parts. Yeah. They got the parts, opposite roles of what they wanted. But at that point, everyone's like, well, no one's ever going to believe that Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, who are so goofy and so fun and so charismatic, would be the nerdy kids at school. Like, these would be the lovable stoner.
Yeah, I feel like
kinda
everyone at school likes them, right? Like, they're cool.
Yeah.
Wait.
they're
So,
just-
so they were friends. Were they not actors before this?
No, Keanu had done, like, this was his big break. Like, he had done a couple of commercials, but he wasn't, like, acting really. Like, this was his big break.
And someone just found him at a mall.
That's what I read, was that they, like, saw them goofing off in a line at a restaurant or at a mall.
God, that's frustrating. All right.
Yeah, it is frustrating.
You gotta spend more time at malls, dude.
I do. That's my problem. I don't like shopping.
Well, or screwing around in line. I don't know.
Mike loves the mall. He'll probably get discovered before I do.
Yeah, I probably would.
Whatever-
I've actually
whatever that
working.
means.
So I no longer work at Best Buy, so I'm comfortable saying that I used to work at Best Buy. I've met so many people at Best Buy, and I actually got you an audition once through my work at Best Buy.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
That's a great story.
You blew it though, because you didn't get the part.
There wasn't a part to be had. It was
That's true.
It was a big cheese at Disney, and he basically brought me in for a private voiceover demo recording session. So, like, my demo is floating around in Disney, but I hardly think that I have a chance getting a role over Kristen Shaw.
Kristen Shaw.
Like, it's kind
She'd
of
probably-
unfair
yeah.
to even
I'd
have
probably
me
go,
in there.
I'd probably go Kristen Shaw.
Right, yeah. I mean, there are things that I have auditioned for that later on I see a clip of it, and it's the same character choices I made, but it's Kristen Shaw. And I'm like, why did I even audition for that? Like, on what planet did my agent think that I had a shot there? I don't really know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
Dustin, can you do me a huge favor?
What?
Can you summarize this movie very briefly?
Yeah, so Bill and Ted are struggling in school, and it turns out that their success in life is vital to the future. So Rufus, from the future, like 700 years in the future, goes back in time to help them to pass their final history exam by giving them a time machine that allows them to round up historical figures and present them in a last-ditch effort to graduate from school, prevent Ted from having to go to military school in Alaska. They'll then be able to form Wild Stallions and make music that saves the entire world and creates, like, universal harmony.
Yeah. Yeah.
So ridiculous.
Epic
I mean-
tale for the ages.
Everything is in the balance here, okay? Like, the fate of the universe is on the shoulders of Bill and Ted.
Their music allows us to communicate with our pets.
Yeah.
They say that at the end. Not only did we make a universal, international, or intergalactic language based off their music, we also found the way to talk to our pets.
Would that really be a good thing?
Yes.
Thinking
So,
no.
Katrina, I'm going to use the words of Rufus to say that definitively yes. So the opening lines of the movie comes from Rufus, played by George Carlin. Hi, welcome to the future, San Dimas, California, 2688. And I'm telling you, it's great here. The air is clean, the water's clean, even the dirt, it's clean. Bowling averages are way up, mini golf scores are way down, and we have more excellent water slides than any other planet we communicate. I'm telling you, this place is great.
What does that have to do with talking to our pets, Michael?
I think
Everything's
it's all
great.
upside. It's all upside. That's
It's
what
great.
I'm telling you.
Why are you arguing with Rufus? He's from the future.
I don't
Well,
see
from
any
this
cold hard evidence that they actually do make the world a better place.
Yeah, they definitely did.
Wait, no. I get it. I get what you're saying. You're saying we should have seen more of this future.
It would
And
have
what
been a
makes it
little bit
so
more
great.
interesting. So we do see the future at one point, and they are revered and worshipped in this future.
But it's like
And-
just like one room, right? Like we don't see
Right.
right,
all
but
of it.
they're
I think you see more of it in the second movie.
they're like officers of some kind because they're all in uniform and they're all very rigid in their movements, and you're like, are they having a good time? I can't really tell.
They're not partying,
Yes.
you know.
Be excellent to
they
each
are
other.
being
they-
excellent to each other.
Are they just hanging out there in that room? Like, what was happening before they arrived in
I don't
that
know, like-
space in time and their, phone booth landed there? They're just these three people, like, chilling up on the wall. What was happening there? Were they
I think
getting
they're
ready for a
monitoring like all of
dance
space and
recital?
time.
Yeah, they're monitoring time to make sure that everything is supposed to happen the way that it's supposed to happen. Which I think is funny. Like, this movie plays very fast and loose with time travel stuff. Like,
Oh my
the whole
god.
movie is a paradox.
Oh Jesus.
They would ruin everything.
Well, and that's the thing. There's no concern about that. Like, they take nearly a dozen historical figures, ranging from Genghis Khan, you have Abraham Lincoln, so one of the greatest presidents of all, Joan of Arc, Napoleon, all these people, brings them to the future and shows them what the future's like, and then sends them back to their time. Like, how does that not change history?
No,
And
well-
then the whole premise of the movie is a paradox. If they don't pass high school, they don't form wild stallions, and we don't get intergalactic
But maybe
peace.
that's
But-
part of what brings the intergalactic peace is showing all these people from history, like Bill and Ted,
rallying around them.
and then sending them back to their times and being like, "Dude, go back to your time and tell everybody to be excellent to each other."
Any one of their actions would have possibly eliminated them from the timeline at any given time. Like, anytime they've
Right.
meddled in the past before they resolve the end of the movie, they're risking
yeah.
making themselves just disappear.
Like,
it
I'm
has
just wondering
some
if the
weird
people in the
rules.
future, like the three people on the wall, don't need this to happen. Like, if they didn't already plan on all of this meddling, is what it takes to create the future that they
Right.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
I mean, it's a
in
bit of
no
a
way
paradox.
falls into... I don't think this is like a true sci-fi film because they just really obviously don't give a shit
the
about
thing
the
is-
timeline.
Well,
Oh
the
no,
thing
we
that's
are
interesting
attaching
about it-
sci-fi elements to this story.
Well,
They
thing
did not
that's
write
interesting
them
about
with
it-
this. No.
they had no concern about preserving the timeline. So it is what it is. But then they also use, cleverly, I think they use time travel to benefit themselves. And they do quite a bit of foreshadowing at the beginning of the movie with Ted's dad missing his keys. And throughout the movie, they're talking about these missing keys. And then you never actually see this happen. But at the end of the movie, they need to get Ted's dad's keys to go unlock the jail cell to let all the historical figures out after they caused a bunch of mayhem. And he's like, wait a second, we have a time machine. Why don't we just go back in time before the keys are missing? Steal the keys, and then leave them here in this bushes right where we're standing right now so we can head him. And then he just like bends over, looks in the bush, and the keys are there. They're like, oh, I guess I did steal my dad's keys kind of thing. Like, I think it's
Hilarious.
There's things in this dumb movie that are done really well and very intelligently.
Right.
Like, there is a master plan within the script, even if these characters are ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I also like that, a little bit of background on this movie. Originally, the time machine was going to be like a van. And the producers were like, wait, that's too similar to Back to the Future. We
Agreed.
can't have a vehicle. So then they do a phone booth, which obviously, for whatever reason, they're not concerned about ripping off Doctor Who.
Right.
But whatever.
I think
But
Doctor
then
Who
there's
is still a little bit more obscure at this time.
Right.
It was mainly a British audience.
Right. But they still have some pretty big similarities to Back to the Future right in the beginning of the movie after Rufus has his little speech about how great everything is. They're goofing off in the basement playing their guitars, and they blow out a speaker just like the beginning of Back to the Future.
Oh.
Yeah. The other thing,
Yeah.
so another thing I would say is the phone booth gives them access to. It's kind of like the internet. Like, they basically have the internet before there's the internet. Like, they can go get all of the knowledge from all of human history, right? And basically cut and paste it into their report at the end of the movie. And so, like, they're not really learning anything. They're just kidnapping
But they do
people.
learn. They do learn at the end.
They do, but not, like, through study. Like, they do kind of through osmosis, or at least, like, being around these people. And it's also kind of weirdly similar to The Matrix, where Keanu Reeves goes in and out of the internet through a phone.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, to speak to like the internet, the knowledge, they even have a phone book that has all the different years they should go to for different people.
Yeah, they're just
Or you
Googling
could
this
just look
shit.
up medieval stuff, and then they could type in the year and find the place and find somebody they need.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
it is very much like the internet, where they find what they want, they type in something on a keypad, and then they get the information they need. It is very much like.
I mean, even when they're going through,
slightly
like,
slower
the
internet.
circuits of time, or I forget what they call it. Like, I feel like that's like an early visualization of the internet, like, in a movie.
It's a series of tubes.
It's a series of tubes, dude.
I like how they also, like, I mean, these guys are not intelligent. So at the beginning of the movie, they're talking about how they want to start their band Wild Stallions, and that's their life. That's all they're concerned about. And so they start talking about how they need to get Eddie Van Halen so their band could be legit. And so they're like, well, we need a video. Well, we need better instruments. Well, we need to know how to play. Well, we need Van Halen to teach us. That's why we need the video.
Yeah.
Like, they get in this like logic loop, and it's just absurd. And then I just love the beginning of the movie when they're talking to the teacher, and the teacher's like, "Who's Joan of Arc? Noah's wife." And then just like their dialogue when they're talking, there's a lot more dialogue in the beginning as they're doing like their little like time heist. They're literally, it gets to a point where there's a montage of them just jumping in time and grabbing somebody and then going.
Yeah.
But I just love their vernacular, the way they speak. Like, we are in danger of flunking most heinously tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, it's also funny, like, anytime they have to, like, when they have to lie about someone's name or use, like, imagination to name someone, like, when they're doing the Star Wars thing, he's like, I'm Darth Ted, I'm Luke Bill. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense, dude. Or then, like, when they're trying to, like, they got all the people at the house, they're like, this is Bob Genghis Khan, like, Dennis Frood, Socrates Johnson.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. They have no imagination.
One of the other things I like, and actually another credit to Katrina saying Bill is actually probably the more intelligent one, is there's a point where they're doing their report on stage, and they have, each historical figure, and they do demonstrate some knowledge. They'll say, like, in this time frame, Joan of Arc beat this enemy, which led to so and so being king in this year. So they obviously did pick up some of the information. So they were able to report what they did, and then they would have the person talk about what they think about San Dimas in 1988, or 1989. When Freud is having his little portion, he is psychoanalyzing Ted and has this whole thing like, your dad is a prick to you because he failed in certain aspects of his life, and he sees you as a way of reliving his life, and he's just like, whoa, like his normal Keanu Reeves, whoa. And then Bill says something along the lines of, like, Freud's like, how about you? And he goes, no, I already know what's wrong with me. I have a slight Oedipal complex issue.
Yeah.
Because his stepmom is only like 3 years older than him, and just what in the 80s we would call hot.
Which is a great gag throughout the movie.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
His dad gives him money and bangs her in his bedroom.
Brings his stepmom in his bedroom.
Yeah.
So twisted.
Yeah.
And they just kind of walk out and watch him close the door. But then I like how their study strategy is to go to Circle K.
And just ask strangers what they know.
Excuse me, when did the Mongols rule China? I don't know, I just work here.
Yeah.
Well, I like even at that point they're like quizzing each other, and they're like, George Washington had wooden teeth, chased Moby Dick. Bro, that's Captain Ahab.
Right? See, Bill knew that much.
And then Ted goes, oh, remember that time we went to the Disney and we went to the Hall of Presidents? George Washington was there. Oh yeah, what did he say? Welcome to the Hall of Presidents.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Obviously, they're dumb, and the way they're just immature. Like when they're trying to get the future selves to prove what their present
What
selves.
number am I thinking of? 69,
69
dudes.
dudes.
I laughed so hard at that because that's kind
I even
of
laughed-
something that we would do.
Really hard when they go to the Wild West first, and this is the Wild West and like ancient Greece when they get Billy the Kid and Socrates. They spend more time in those ones, and then the medieval time. And then everybody else is just quick. But at the beginning, the first thing we see, like they land right next to an outhouse, and you just hear fart sounds as the guy's taking a
Yeah,
crap in the
yeah.
outhouse.
It's really long, too.
And then I like when they go to visit Socrates, and then they go, he says something like, the only wisdom is knowing you know nothing. And then they're like, that's us! Like, all excited. And then they go to Socrates, and then they use, all we are is dust in the wind. And Socrates is just mind blown.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And then, like, the last thing where they spend really any time in is in the medieval time. They go into the castle, they put on, suits of armor, and like Dustin said, I'm Darth Ted, I'm Luke Bill.
Luke Bill.
And they, like... stupid, but they like do this little sword fight, and then Ted falls down the stairs, and you just see these guards let's like stab him, and Bill is like, die dick wee, and like charges them, and somehow we don't see it, but Ted just fell out of the armor and survives.
Right.
But they're wasting time trying to find the princesses. And then Bill is like, hey, we don't have time for this. We're supposed to be doing a report. It's a report, not a babe report. And Ted goes, dude, those are historical babes. And then Bill's like, oh, okay. And then Rufus, as like a reward for getting an A+ on their exam, kidnaps these women from the past and brings them to the future to be their girlfriends.
Yeah, and be in the band.
And being part of the band.
The girls are super chill with it. Also, I love
think
that no one
they're
that
totally
they
down.
abducted ended up getting a rare disease from another time and died, which definitely would have happened.
Dude, Napoleon
Yeah.
was running amok for like a day in a water park.
That was my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, Napoleon
Waterloo.
out of time.
It
Just
wa-
all
it
of the
was a
Napoleon
full-
stuff.
It was a full minute and a half montage of Napoleon being a dick to little kids at the water park.
Yeah, or when
Yeah.
they took him to ice cream, and he just like pigged out on all the ice cream.
Eats the whole thing.
I think Napoleon is my favorite part of this film.
Napoleon was great. Well, what's funny is at the end of the movie, when Napoleon is doing his portion on the screen, or not on the screen, on the stage, he's actually like demonstrating a battle plan, and Ted goes, "No, I don't think it'll work." And that was actually like Waterloo, where he got defeated.
Right.
That he was demonstrating. God, this movie's so good.
Well, and-
I like how they just use the time machine in front of people, and like they don't even try to hide that they're time travelers.
Well, there's the point in the movie when the dad is telling him, or he just told him that he ships out tomorrow night. The dad walks out the front door. He basically watches this thing disappear. He sees like the tail end of it disappearing in its blip. And then there's a glow, an electrical glow left on the ground. He kind of looks at it, and then he sort of shrugs like, oh, well. Like,
And he
kids.
is a cop.
Kids these days. Like, what?
He has to go to work at the police station.
Yeah.
I love that the dad is wearing an NRA jacket in this.
Yeah.
It's this cherry on top that it seems almost like it was put in there for us to appreciate years later. Just what a jerk the dad is.
Well, I mean, I love the whole all the cops in that San Dimas police station are inept. Like, so the boys show up, and they barely hide. They end up typing a letter to themselves from the future. So this is like a whole thing where they use time travel to help them out in the past. So they're like, we need to remember to do this after the fact. So
Trash
after we
can,
give our
dude.
report.
Trash can.
And then a trash can just falls on his dad. They type a letter, and it was like, "Dear Bill and Ted, good luck on your report. Duck." And then they duck, and the cops kind of like walk by.
Like, you have to
it's
wonder
just
how many
absurd.
times they had to go through to pull it off.
Well, and the thing that's weird about this is, while they're time traveling, time is still going where they are. So when they're in the past, they're just not in the present.
Yeah, this is the part of
And-
the film where it would legitimately get super confusing and complicated. I sort of
Well-
lost track at 4 different times that they would have to travel to that point in order to pull off those things.
Yeah. So in that whole police station thing, they would have had to do things 3 different times. They would have had to one for the keys, one for typing the letter, one for dropping the trash can. So that's 3 different trips.
They
that
had a
would have had to do
lot
stuff
that they
after the
had to
fact.
do after their report.
Right. And it shows that they could do things if they put their mind to it. They just need to be motivated.
Right.
Like they're dumb, but they're able to think their way out of problems throughout the whole movie
They can problem
and
solve.
outsmart people.
Well, but
yeah, they can problem solve.
so at the beginning, at the Circle K, they visit themselves,
Yeah.
Yep.
which is strange for a time travel movie.
Right.
Like-
Well, and it was an accident. They didn't mean to, but then they realized it was destined. They had to get out. They're like, oh, yeah, that's the time where we met each other. We have to go out and say something.
Yeah.
Well, what do we say? It doesn't really matter. We know what we say because we said it already.
Right.
And then just go out there and have their thing. 69, dude.
Might as well, I guess. Whatever.
So good. I also really appreciate that was George Carlin,
Yeah.
He's so
which
great.
seems
Originally, they
completely
wanted to get-
random now, looking back on
Well,
it.
they wanted to get like a serious actor like Sean Connery's who they wanted. And then I don't remember. I read somewhere how they got it back in the day, but they wanted to get somebody more serious. And then George Carlin expressed interest in the role. They're like, sure. And he was great as Rufus.
I thought he was perfect because, he impresses the severity of the situation upon them, but he also just kind of doesn't really care. Like, he's got other stuff to handle. And he
I
just
think
leaves.
he just kind of knows it's going to work out.
Yeah.
Right. Well, he also is from a timeline where they base their lives off of these 2 slackers, where even at the end of the movie, after everything's all said and done, there's a point where, I can't remember if it was Bill or Ted who said this. Once again, they're pretty interchangeable. But he goes, we traveled through time, we met world leaders, got an A+ on our report, but nothing has changed. Like, maybe we should learn how to play these instruments. And then Rufus just shows up, gives them the babes, and gives them these 2 really nice guitars. And then Rufus just shreds on the guitar and then looks over at them like, you guys will get better, kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
George Carlin was great in this, where, like he said, like Dustin said, he knows everything's going to work out and he's going to help his boys get shit done.
Okay, but in order for any of this to have happened, they had to have succeeded in their report in some capacity on some other timeline for
paradox.
that future to exist. I don't like these
It's-
kinds of things.
It's a paradox. It's just like John Connor sent his own dad back in time to impregnate his mom so he would be born.
So twisted.
It's best if you don't think about these things.
Yeah. They all end up a little bit in that Oedipus area.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this movie had the word dude 70 times
That's
and
it?
30 excellence.
Nice.
Excellent.
Well, this movie is only like 90 minutes. It's not a long movie.
Really?
It's like an hour. Yeah, I think it's only like an hour and 23 minutes. It's not super long.
They do so much.
You're using a dude almost every minute. Like every minute and a half they use the word. So that's quite a bit.
Dude.
Worked out.
It did work out. It's
It did.
great. I mean, so this movie ended up being a cartoon for 2 seasons. The first season had Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter and George Carlin reprise their roles. The second season did not, because at that point Keanu Reeves was blowing up. He was filming Point Break, and at the end of Point Break he has super long hair because he had to grow his hair out long again for the sequel to this movie, Bill and Ted's Bogus Adventure.
Bogus Journey.
And then Bogus Journeys. I apologize, Dustin. I'm sorry.
That's good. I forgive you.
And then obviously they're doing a third movie, which is why we're kind of covering this now. Is the movie just started principal photography last month, and they just it was actually kind of a mess up on their part, but a bunch of news outlets reported that Sadler, what's his name? David Sadler, Alex Sadler, the guy who plays Death in the second movie. He's also the bad guy in Die Hard 2. Is back, and they actually released an image of him, like first image of him back as Death, but it was actually just a cropped photo from the poster of the second movie. Yeah, but he did get an image of Bill and Ted looking, in their 50s, and Keanu shaved his beard for this movie.
Yeah.
That was never a strong beard anyway.
Hey, If I grew out my beard, it would be very patchy like Keanu's. So I appreciate this man representing the patchy beard.
I
people.
appreciate you not growing out that disgusting beard.
I'm just saying I can never have a beard like Dustin's, and I appreciate.
But you can't
that there
have
are
a
people
beard like
Keanu.
Keanu's.
You appreciate that Keanu has the blind confidence to do it anyway, even though it's disgusting.
Right, but
Yes.
because of people like him being frontiersmen, just manifest destiny.
Getting out there, dude.
for the beards.
Just hey, man, it's not.
I
it's,
could
it's,
do it
It's not the beard on the
if I
outside
wanted
though.
to.
It's the beard on the inside that counts.
Oh god.
Beard on the inside. Oh man, that is great.
Yeah, that's
Beard on the
disgusting.
inside. I'm gonna live my life by that. It's not the beard on the outside; it's the beard on the
Hey,
inside that
man,
matters.
that's the one that's important. You know, when you're feeling blue, just think about that. It'll turn you right around.
Inner beard.
My
The inner beard.
Oh man.
It's spiritual.
So we didn't talk about like the montage of everyone being crazy,
Oh,
which
gosh.
I thought was very enjoyable.
They didn't really do much with Joan of Arc. She would
She
just
took over a fitness class.
she would just occasionally pop up doing these completely absurd things, with little to no lines.
No, she didn't. Well, she's supposed to be French, so she wouldn't speak. Joan of Arc's French, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, so she
Napoleon
wouldn't
was
speak.
So is
talking.
Napoleon.
Barely though, but he would just be like, "Oh, I'm not going to do the French accent. I'm not going to fall in this trap." Like the dinner game episode of Remake Rewind. But he didn't really speak English. He'd just like mumble stuff, and he'd be like, "Incompetent."
There was a
That's all
part
really
where
did.
he yelled something that sounded like "Bignon."
Pignon.
Bignon. I really appreciated that.
I mean, I think the French
Jonah-
that he does speak is like, you could get what he's talking about, like situationally and in context. You can kind of
Right.
translate it, you know.
I'm looking. I know the actress who plays Joan of Arc
She was a
is
go-go.
somebody. That's what it is. Yeah, she's part of the Go-Go's. Yeah,
She's discount Winona Ryder.
she does look like the Diet Coke Winona Ryder,
Yeah.
I liked her.
the store brand. Yeah, she was fine.
Store brand. She was all right. She was there. It was a thing.
She was there.
The guy
Yeah.
who played Billy the Kid, I couldn't tell you his name unless I looked it up. Dan Shore. He's still working, and he does a lot of stuff. But he's got one of those faces where you're like, what else have I seen him in? And it's because you've seen
Yeah.
him in like 50 things in small roles.
Well, Alex Winter is still so he mainly directs things, but he does a lot of voice work, and he doesn't do a ton of stuff. He has very few actual live action roles. So I'm actually very glad that we're getting this third movie because we get to see him again. I'm actually surprised Keanu Reeves wants to do the third one because there was a point in interviews where he said he was afraid that his epitaph on his headstone would say, "Here lies Keanu Reeves. He played Ted."
I think he has safely preserved his place in pop culture history. And people recognize that he has done enough different things that he's not going to fall into that. And
Right,
if
I mean,
anything, the Matrix is going to be his legacy.
And John Wick.
John Wick is so good, but I don't think that many people really know and appreciate John Wick.
No, John Wick is like huge. Like everybody I know has seen John Wick, whether maybe not in theaters, but
That's
they've seen it. Like
your
everybody knows John Wick.
demographic, though.
No, I'm talking about like working. Well, I'm not gonna say where I work, but like coworkers who like never see any. Like there's this girl who's an engineer where I work who never watches anything. Like she hadn't seen Lion King. She hasn't seen any of the Disney ones. She watches the John Wick movies because they're that like people talk about the action in these movies are so incredible that you have to see them. John Wick's become a phenomenon, especially with John Wick 3 coming out. Like Keanu, we're having a Keanu-sance right now.
Keanu's definitely
It's
having
great.
a moment, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Right. And he deserves it. He's been
Hell yeah, he does.
working consistently, working his ass off for 30 years, and
dude, if he walked into
genuinely
my
seems
house
like a
right
great
now,
guy.
I would be like, dude, I'm proud of you, Keanu.
I'm proud of him as well.
Good
Yeah, but
job.
I've always been on Team Keanu.
Now
Good
that we've
job.
Chuck Norris'd him, we're going to get sick of him because we're going to have like
I don't think so.
oversaturation, Keanu's saturation.
But I think
It's
he's
not
smart
gonna be
enough
good.
not to do that. He's been very smart with his career, picking roles.
He's
that
also
work
like
for him.
self-deprecating. Like he was in what was that one that was just on Netflix? Always Be My Maybe.
Okay, so here's the thing. He was great in that. That movie was crap.
Yeah, but we're talking about Keanu. We're not talking about Always Be My Maybe. And I liked his style. I like him being able to make fun of himself or play a caricature of himself.
Well, and he's very humble. We know he's very generous. Like, he's given a ton of money to charity. He is not one of these actors who thinks he's better. He thinks he's just a regular human being. He rides the subway in New York. Recently, just like a month ago, like, he was on an airplane and the airplane wasn't going to be able to go. So the airport paid for like shuttle service. And instead of, getting a private thing, he took the regular shuttle with everybody else. Like, he's a very down to earth guy, and I think he deserves all the accolades that he's getting right now. I do. I think he's a great guy, and I would love to have a beer with him and discuss our inner beards.
Yeah.
Oh God.
You'd probably get along really good.
I think I would. Let's see. The only other thing I really thought Beethoven was rad, playing like
Oh yeah,
five
that was
different
cool.
pianos at the same time.
Fun.
I thought that was great. I like how they all had to do chores at Bill's house.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Billy the Kid was just throwing trash in like drawers. That was great. Let's see. Anything? No, that's pretty much it. I think this movie is definitely something that people should watch. So I'm going to go around. Dustin, did this ruin your childhood, or did you enjoy watching
And I
this?
thought we were going to
I enjoyed
recap
it
our
again.
favorite moments. You always do
Oh,
that.
recap your favorite moments. Go ahead. Sorry. Go.
Dustin.
Mine was when they were naming all of the. I already brought it up, but when they were introducing Socrates Johnson, Dennis Frood, Bob Genghis Khan. That's my favorite part of the whole movie.
What's your favorite part, honey?
My favorite part is the minute and a half montage of Napoleon being a dick to kids at the water park. But the next moment comes really soon after that, where the rest of them are in the mall and they kind of reconvene, and Freud has a corn dog. I love that.
That's very Freudian that he would pick up something so phallic. I think my favorite part of the movie is when they realize that they're gonna. It's really like the first 20 minutes of the movie. I just love the way that they speak to each other, and they realize that they're in over their heads, and then they get this lifesaver thrown their way in the form of time travel, and they're just, it's weird how they're supposed to be stupid, but they have this way of speaking that's both stupid and intelligent. Like, we're gonna fail most heinously. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's such a unique way of talking, and I just love the beginning part where they're very uncomfortable with the time travel, and then they just jump in, and then they just kind of master it, and they're fine with it. But I love the build-up of the characters at the beginning. I think the whole first 20 minutes is flawless.
It's a good moment.
All right, so going around, Katrina, did this ruin your childhood?
No, because I had very low expectations for this film.
Did it exceed your expectations?
It did. It absolutely did. It was dumb. It is a dumb movie, but it is so enjoyable.
I agree. Dustin, how about you?
Did not ruin my childhood. Definitely made me feel old. But yeah, it was cool. Like, just seeing it kind of through a different lens. Like, I mean, when this movie was around, like, Bill and Ted were like a little bit older. Yeah, than I was. So it was like, oh, this is cool, man. Like, high school's gonna be awesome. No, it's just like, oh, that's like the internet. Oh, I'm kind of too old to identify with these characters anymore.
Right.
Right.
I'm in the same boat. I looked up to Keanu Reeves a lot, even as a child, because I loved this movie. I loved Speed. I loved Point Break. I watched all those movies, of course, The Matrix. So I did relate to these characters on me. And now looking back at them, obviously thinking they're dumb and being very concerned about the timeline. But realizing it's just a fun movie. This definitely didn't ruin my childhood. I kind of regret not watching this more often. I don't think I've watched this movie since we lived in San Francisco. I feel like 2012, 2013 was the last time I watched this movie, and that's not often enough for me.
It needs to go back into the rotation.
There are a few movies that we've covered on this podcast for both Remake Rewind and this one that are now annual reviewing. So I watch Point Break at least once a year, if not twice. I've watched The Sandlot again. This is probably going to be one that makes it into my annual rotation again.
Oh, good.
So, Katrina,
Yeah.
what are we going to be covering on the next episode?
Spice World.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I want.
Whatever.
All right. So, a little bit of bookkeeping really quick. I want to tell everybody about this really great app that we're partnering with right now. It's called Podcoin. It's basically you get paid to listen to podcasts. It's available on iOS and Android. And if you use our code MyChildhood, you can actually get 300 free coins to start redeeming gift cards and whatnot. So check it out. It's available on iOS and Android. You're going to be listening to podcasts anyway. You might as well get paid for it. And use our invite code, and you'll get free coins.
Do it.
Do it. All right, well, that's it. Thank you guys for listening to Ruin My Childhood. Check out our other great podcast, Remake Rewind. Check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Instagram is where we do most of our stuff, so check us out there. And if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/MDXpods, and it helps us maintain the website and rent movies and whatnot. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for
And
listening.
thanks, Dustin, for being on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's good
All
to
right.
have you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.